So I can't have the camera on, otherwise you'd just be looking at my nostril. Okay, so I'm using a program called Procreate, and this is on my iPad Pro, not the most recent one. I think it's the generation before it. So somebody asked about perspective, which is a great question. So a lot of it's just going to be trial and error with perspective. There are some like drawing guides, especially in this one, but you may not always have that. Okay, so we got the 1-point perspective, right? I try to zoom in a little bit, make the lines. Okay, hopefully you guys can see the lines. So we got our horizontal lines, which is the blue ones, and then we've got the green or more teal. I'm going to make them, oh, that doesn't work. There we go, so they're black now. So you can see that's 1-point perspective, right? So that's just straight on for us because it's right dead center. Here it is when it's more towards the left, right? So you can see how it changes. And then towards the right. But sometimes, like when you see shapes, it's not quite 1-point perspective, it's more 2-point. So that makes things a little bit more complicated, but not by too much. And with this, you can, I guess, change the horizontal line, which is still blue. But for our sake, it's going to be pretty easy. So I'm just going to leave it on 2-point right now. Nope, can't. Oh. Did I just stop broadcasting?
The screen is not moving anymore.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, let me just stop share. Start. Okay. Okay, hopefully that was the only time that happened.
I don't think you're sharing yet.
So, oh, I'm not. Start. There we go. Now it should be perfect. So I guess for this sake, because with perspective, I'm just going to assume that you won't have these guides necessarily. So I'm going to just wing it. So we've got our horizontal. So we've got our horizontal line, right? 1-point, another point. So let's say, is there a specific thing that you're having issue with showing in perspective, or just in general?
Just understanding it. Like if I'm looking at a building, I see some comics that have, they're sloping, and to my mind, they're parallel, but they're not because they're doing it in perspective. It's just making things line up, tables and chairs and people sitting at them. It's confusing.
Okay, so let's start with buildings because those are just going to be a very simple rectangular shape. So right now I drew a line more towards the center, and then we're going to connect our vanishing point to that middle line. So as you can see, I just did it very loosely. I mean, you can get as technical as you want, but I don't really, for me, I don't see a point because it's just a quick sketch. And then we've got those lines. And then just like that. So we've got our box here. Now, as far as like some of the smaller details and stuff like that, we can start adding a door. So we just add some more horizontal lines. Try to gauge where that would go on that vanishing line. So this line right here and this line, they seem parallel to each other, but because of the vanishing point, they're kind of closing more towards N. And as the higher up we go towards the vanishing, or not the vanishing line, the horizontal line here, the flatter this top line would be. So like if there was a line somewhere right here, so we want a window right here, and I did a vanishing line there, and there. So this is going to be a little bit more horizontal than what this line is. So these lines are more horizontal than what that line is. So many arrows. So let's say our building was off to the side. So there's one there, one there. So there's our building. So we connect to the top here and connect to the right dot. It's a bit of a stretch. So this is where like skewing things can really happen. Excuse me. So we draw a vertical line here. And this is where trying to get the perspective proportions right can be a little bit difficult too, because of this line right here, or this little shape right here, it's closer to the vanishing point. So it's going to come to the point a little bit more steeper than what it would if it went to that vanishing point. So going to guess that it would be about this wide here. So I would like try to double the distance. So like between here to here should be about the same between here and here. Choose another color. Well, I guess it's a little bit further out. Shows how much I know about perspective. I just guess. I don't get too much into the technicalities of it. So you want to make it a little bit wider. And there are books out there and speeches that go more in depth about it, which I can link to, because I know Marshall, he's on the Draftsman podcast. He's done a perspective lesson on this that I think you could spend, I think it's about $12 or something. So it's a video series, and he goes really in depth about it, because like that's what he teaches at school at the community college that he's at. So there's our front, and then if we wanted a door on the side, you would want the up and down lines to be a little bit closer together. And then yeah, so this line and that line. So this line right here, that's a little bit more steeper than what this line is. So let's bring up a chair. I'm going to try doing different colors as well. Okay, so should I start my chair more in the center, to the left side, or to the right side?
I don't know. Left.
Okay. So that'll be the top of her chair. So there's that. Now, when it comes to drawing, what I'm going to do is do this in different layers. So typically when you're drawing on a sheet of paper, this blue line would be a lot lighter than what I'm doing it as right now. And you'll see in a minute that I'm going to lower the opacity. Oh, there we go. So there's one. This is not going to be perfect. There's another. And thankfully, because I've got that sketched out, I know that this and this will fall on the same plane. And then same with the back legs when it comes to that line. I'm going to guess it's about there. No, it's about there. let's see. So I'm going to do the back. So I'm making the back more diagonal. Yeah, that's already messed up. There we go. And that's why we do our grids. Have our little guidelines.
And how do you know where to draw the guidelines? I know obviously just the big dots and that, but when you're doing different details, like within inside there, you're drawing separate guidelines. Is it just? I'm not sure how you determine the endpoint.
So like, here, let me lower this. So like this point up here to this point right here. So you just draw, what I do is I draw the vertical lines first, because that's going to be the most easiest. Because then that way I know where it starts and where it ends. And then you go from the vanishing point up to the end point. So then you draw the width that you want and then bring it back down to about where the start point is. Does that make sense, or do you want me to explain a little bit more?
No, that's fine. Just take some practice on my end, I guess.
Yeah, and as I said, there's a lot of good resources out there. I'll have to find them. And I know there's a few other creatives here that can also share the resources too. Okay, so chairs typically have, or some chairs do, they have like a little plush seating. So because I have this light blue line here sketched out, I can start adding in the details. So let's see. So I'm going to cut this in half just a touch. I'm going to change my eraser. There we go. So I'm cutting the chair in half just ever so slightly. I'm going to start adding some weird shapes to it too as well. So instead of making this just like a complete rectangular shape, there's a technical term for it. It kind of just slopes downwards. All right, so using this as kind of a guide and these light lines as a guide, we can start adding in a very plush seating arrangement. This might be a little bit too soft, but that's okay. And sometimes they have little buttons on them. So there we are. Add a little bit of folds to a few sections, just enough to show that it's cloth as opposed to like a hard line. And then let's go to the backing. So I know I want this to be kind of more hard, a little bit more rigid. So I'm just following over the blue lines that we initially, or the lighter lines that we initially sketched. Let's say there's a little section here that's also going to be plush. So I'm using the lines from there, going to be using the lines from here and this bottom line as kind of a guide. So in that way I don't have to sit here and draw more of these fainter lines. And it also makes the process a little bit easier when you're not getting too technical about it, which when it comes to sketching, it's all about just being loose. So there's that. There's that. And then let's start adding some. Oh, I don't think I want it quite like that. Making it more like a little bit more rigid pillowy. So for this, I ended up just rounding the edges a bit. And then that way it creates like a little bit more of a pillow. A little button in there and some little lines to show folds. A little bit more here. Going to give it some three-dimensionality. There we go. So this back pillow doesn't look quite as soft as what this one would. I don't think I would sit on that seat. Looks like it might just sink into, be like a really bad pillow. So we just start tracing over some of these other lines. So there's that. Let's see. Gonna do the horizontal line, this leg here. Now let's say this leg was gonna have like some funky design to it. So I'm gonna draw a straight line there, straight line there. So I'm gonna use some of the guidelines from here to help guide the line there. Keep track of the time. Okay. So I've got that there. I'm just gonna widen this out. Looks like bell-bottom pants. So I got that widened out, and then just follow the guides from the bottom. And we can add some more decals to it. Make it modern, I guess. Yep. Let's see, these other legs might be a little bit harder. So there's that. Don't be afraid to erase. Let's see, so that goes there. That should go there. So I'm pretty sure once I remove these softer lines, that leg's gonna look a little weird. And if you really wanted like this part to be more even throughout all the other legs, you would be drawing some guidelines. Thankfully, I got pretty well close.
That's looking good.
Yeah. Let's see, that goes there. Yep, and then let's remove the lines and I mean, it's a chair.
Oh yeah, for sure. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. So I will say, looking at this right now, this bottom section does look a little wonky perspective wise, as opposed to this top section. So I mean, I could try fixing it, but there's only 6 minutes left.
Couldn't tell at all. I think it looks awesome. I don't think it looks off at all.
Thank you. I mean, this seat's probably a little bit wide, but yeah. So yeah, there's as best as I could a perspective lesson
Thank you very
in
much.
30 minutes. You're welcome.
You are you using a tablet then to do the drawing, or?
Yep, so I'm using the iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil.
Okay.
Which I mean, there are a little bit more cheaper options out there for people who want to draw more digitally, but I would highly recommend getting a sketchbook and a pencil. because I'm always an advocate for the more analog approach when it comes to learning, especially with drawing. It'll just be a lot more easier to make mistakes as opposed to with digital where you have the undo button and like it just feels like everything should be perfect.
Do you have any tips? So I have like I'm not a graphic designer or anybody, an artist really by trade, but I do have like a $25 drawing tablet that I can hook up to my PC and mess around with, and Illustrator and stuff.
Yep.
I just don't feel like I can ever get used to using it. Like,
So when it comes to tablets that attach to your computer, one thing that I would look at is the active size of the active area and how big that is. Because if it's just 3 inches by 2 inches, that's not going to be good for drawing.
sure.
I would recommend. I go for Wacom tablets, but a lot of the competitor brands are really good. So I think probably around 4 by 6
Web seems.
inches
Call
would
me.
be.
Kelly wants to know. Being that it is beer company night at Calvin's Dry Campus, is anyone else drinking?
Oh. So I would recommend a 4 by 6 active area is a good start, or if you can go a little bit bigger than that. Because I feel like if you can get it as close as possible as far as like having an active area on tablets that are as big as sized sheet of paper, that'll be a lot more better for like your hand in preventing cramps and all of that from happening. Because I know I had a friend who had a tablet where the active area was incredibly small. And while he drew with it, it just causes more strain on your hand than necessary.
Sure.
But yeah, that's also a pretty good start too. Any other questions? All right.